are live. Hey everyone out in Facebook. We are going to give just a couple seconds for people to kind of get on, and so before we get started, I definitely want to hear from all of you. So feel free to post in the comments, tell us your name, tell us where you're from, and also our guest tonight is from Minneapolis. So if anyone's from Minnesota, give us a shout out. We would love to hear from you. We got a hello from Arkansas, Gail. Hi, Gail. I won't greet everyone. We're going to get right down to business. But we also, hi, Beth Maxwell. Beth is one of our ambassadors and has been a guest on Ladies Night in the past. So hi, Beth.
Hi,
Rebecca
Beth.
from Washington. I hope you're staying safe from all the fires up there. And Jennifer from Florida. Wow, we got the whole state covered. Safe in Florida too, because I hear there's some storms going on down there. Yeah, looks like we are, we got the whole country joining us tonight, Pilar.
Oh,
exciting.
That's great.
So I am going to just jump right in. Okay, we also have Bobby from Nevada. I'm going to say hi, and then I'm going to start jumping right in here. Hi, everyone. I am Colleen Taylor. I am the COO of Boom by Cindy Joseph, and welcome to Ladies Night. We do these live hangouts about once a month here at Boom, and if you've never joined us before, this is our chance to spend time with you. Answer your questions and just talk about what's new here at Boom. And tonight is pretty special because for the first time ever, we are chatting with just one amazing woman here on Boom Ladies Night. In the past, we've had a couple ladies join us, and chances are you already know her from our videos here at Boom. So everyone, please meet Pilar Gerasimo. Pilar is an award-winning health journalist. She is the founding editor of Experience Life magazine. She's a podcaster. She's the author of The Healthy Deviant. Pilar was also very close friends with our Boom founder, Cindy Joseph, for over 15 years. And for the past 6 months or so, Pilar has been sharing a few of the insights that she's learned from Cindy in our face-to-face video series. So Pilar, we are so excited to have you join us. Hopefully I did not leave anything out. If so, please, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Oh, thank you so much, Colleen. Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you. First of all, let me say that. And every time I do anything with Boom, I feel like the presence of Cindy, and I feel closer to her because of it. So it's always a real treat to connect with you and your whole team. And, you covered a lot of bases there. Yeah, I mean, I met Cindy originally through my health journalism, and I think that's probably how most people who are familiar with my work know my work is through Experience Life magazine, which I founded with in partnership with Lifetime Fitness in 2001. And it was, at that time, really the first whole person, whole life, healthy living magazine. And one thing that Cindy and I really shared in common was a deep-seated belief that health is both a body and mind and spirit pursuit. And you really can't divide up health and happiness as separate things, or try to think of mental health and physical health as totally different. So a lot of the work that I did and a lot of the work that Cindy did sort of dovetailed in this space of choosing to be healthy even in the face of real challenges, and choosing to be healthy in a predominantly unhealthy world, and being willing to challenge the social norms, the expectations, the values and assumptions that have held a lot of us back from showing up with our full mojo and glory and happiness and giving our best gifts to the world around us. So all the work I've done that you mentioned, like my podcasting and my book, which is my most recent huge project, it took me 5 years to write, and Cindy was a great help while I was working on it. But all of that work really comes down to this sort of central passion I have for helping people choose health and happiness even in the face of real challenges.
Awesome. Thank you so much for kind of rounding out that introduction. As I said, everyone watching, this is going to be a fun night. So as I said, Pilar has been sharing some wisdom inspired by Cindy in our face-to-face video series. And tonight we're going to dig just a little bit deeper into some of those stories and what she's been sharing so far. And we are going to share a few stories about Cindy that you haven't heard on face-to-face. And we're going to talk about Pilar's silver hair journey. You can see what a beautiful mane of silver locks Pilar has, and also answer any questions that you have for Pilar. So you don't have to save up your questions. You can add them in the Facebook right now. We may not answer them right away. We're going to kind of try to answer them when we're on that topic, and then some of them may get answered toward the end. So if you do have a question for Pilar, again, drop it in the Facebook in the thread below, and we will get to those questions when we can. So Pilar, I would love to start with you and Cindy. I know obviously you were friends for a long time, but before she started Boom even. And so for everyone who doesn't know this story, if you could just kind of recap quickly how you two met.
Yeah. Well, I often said I kind of manifested Cindy into my life. For folks out there who've ever made vision boards, when I was starting the magazine Experience Life, I created what effectively is a brand board for the magazine because it didn't exist before, so I had to really dream up what it would be. And so I had this very large piece of tag board, and I was for months gluing pictures that represented the look and feel of the magazine, everything from colors and fonts to images of people that I thought represented the vibe of the magazine. And this one specific picture was of Cindy. And I didn't know who she was at the time. It was a picture I cut out of an ad or a catalog or something. And I was just blown away by this image. And I cut it out originally because it inspired me personally. And then when I started to make this brand board, I stuck it right in the middle of the brand board. And I was like, I want it to be like that, like about people who look and feel great because that's how they are in themselves. I want radiant energy, and I want vitality. And I want a diverse array of human beings, not just this one type that we've seen so much of, idealized notions of beauty, a certain age, a certain size, a certain shape, a certain color, all of that. So it was a challenging big order. And when I put her picture on there, I had no real sense I would ever encounter her. But over time, I ended up finding out her name through strange circumstances. And I found out she was a model for Ford Model Agency. So I called Ford Modeling Agency and asked them about her. And they said, oh yeah, she's with us. Well, they asked the questions that I had, and she said she'd be willing to be on the cover. So when I first met Cindy, it was at the Minneapolis airport when I went to pick her up for this photo shoot that she'd agreed to do with us in Minneapolis, strangely, which we never did very much of that, but mostly we'd shoot in LA or New York. But we brought her here, and we ended up just spending a ton of time together. I loved her from the moment I met her. There was no artifice. There was no ego. Cindy was just how Cindy was. And she showed up happy and ready to share and chit chat. So we went to the photo shoot, and then we had dinner that night, and we talked for hours. And I asked her a bunch of questions. I mean, Cindy loved questions. And I will say to anybody who has a question out there in the Facebook world, please be generous in sharing your question, because that's always what makes conversations interesting. And Cindy was just a phenomenal conversationalist. I'm a journalist, so I'm pretty good at questions. I just asked her question after question. How do you do this? How do you do that? Where did you come from? How did you learn this? And she shared with me basically her whole philosophy of life in the course of a few hours. And from that moment, we just became friends and hung out and did other things together. And that was, 15 years went by like that.
I love it. I love it. And obviously, like you said, she was your cover model. And was she your first silver-haired model?
She was. Yeah. She was. In fact, aside from maybe there's like a few men who have been sort of silver fox types. Mm-hmm. And I think she and Lynn Twist, maybe another author, there maybe are 2 or 3 other women with silver hair. But she definitely was the first. And I think, she actually appeared on the cover twice. We did a best of issue a few years after we started. And I was excited about refeaturing her. And by that time, her career had been growing and taking off even more. And I think she had started Boom by that time. So, yeah.
Right. I love it. Yeah. Well, like you were saying, you were working towards an inclusive look for this magazine. And I love that. That's why I asked that question, is because, that the silver-haired, not just silver-haired models, obviously, but as your silver hair is coming in, we also want to be represented. And I love that you had this, this inclusive idea for this magazine. And of course, Cindy, she just embodied all of that radiant energy and all those things you said. So give us a little story about you and Cindy that maybe hasn't been on Face to Face, or embellish on one that maybe you just sort of touched on Face to Face.
Yeah, well, I was thinking there's so many great stories, but one that might be of real interest to the folks in the Boom community was a particular sort of a pivot point for Cindy in Boom. And so originally when Cindy told me about this idea that she had for a pro-age cosmetics and skincare company, I just thought it was genius. And I'm aware, Cindy was a woman of many ideas, so I wasn't clear that it was something she was going to run with necessarily. But over the course of a few years, she started this company and it started growing. And she started doing Saturdays with Cindy. And I was just, in love with that whole idea of using the company and the products as a delivery system for her philosophy, and really enrolling other women, other people in challenging some of their notions about beauty and aging and health and happiness and all of that. So while the company was beginning to grow, Cindy was really throwing in a lot of her own personal energy and time and money. And it was growing, but it was growing at a smallish sort of pace. And I think she was starting to feel kind of burdened by how much work it was to do as sort of a small family business. So one day we took a lot of classes together. That was something that Cindy and I did a lot of. Yeah. And we were in a class with a group of people we knew pretty well, and the teachers were folks who were also friends. And for some reason, I ended up starting to talk about my own life. And my experience at the time was of being completely overworked and worn out and overwhelmed and exhausted. And I was just kind of at that edge that I think a lot of us get to, where you're like, am I even doing the right thing? Is this even any meaning for me? And I got done with my whole soliloquy. And Cindy, who was sitting right next to me, was like, I have something to say. And she's like, I feel like that too. And I love my business and I love Boom, but this is kind of like wearing me out, and it's not as much fun as I want it to be. I want it to be, this is the part I want to do, and I'm doing all this other stuff. And one of the teachers was like, that's really interesting. I think you should talk to Ezra, who was related in this whole bunch of group of friends and family. And Ezra and Cindy had been friends for many, many, many years. And Ezra was becoming really skilled in the realms of online business. So long story short, Cindy and Ezra ended up talking, and Ezra ended up becoming a partner in Boom. And it just then took off because Ezra was doing what Ezra does so well. And of course, Cindy was doing all the things she loved and not the stuff she didn't. And it felt to me like being present at one of those moments of just genius and brilliance, where for Cindy, what it was is she got honest with herself about what she was willing and not willing to do, and how she wanted this business to enhance her own and other people's lives, not feel like a burden to anybody. And it was just really fun to see the business then just take off and start reaching, instead of, hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of people, millions of people. And that was just a magical moment to be present for.
Yeah, I love that story so much. And because I happen to know Ezra too, it's just so nice to hear the history of that, like just that light bulb moment. It's beautiful. I love it. And I know, obviously we've touched on the Saturdays with Cindy, and I know that that you and Cindy had talked about creating a series of videos together as well. And, before she passed, and I was curious how that has inspired Face to Face. Obviously, I've seen a few episodes already, but if you could speak to that a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, I want to say how grateful I am for the opportunity to be doing Face to Face, and the episodes that we've done have been just such a pleasure and an honor for me. The idea for this originated when Cindy and I, by this time, we've been friends for 10 or 12 years. So I had been working on the magazine and she'd been working on Boom, and then I left the magazine and I started working on the book, and we had so much to talk about that we would have these conversations, and she's like, we should be recording this. And originally I was like, well, you should come on the podcast. You know, I do this podcast called The Living Experiment with my friend Dallas Hartwig. And I always wanted to have Cindy on the podcast. And we couldn't quite work out the timing. And I was traveling and she was traveling. And then one day, I don't remember when, we're like, maybe we should just have a podcast. We should have a video podcast. We should have a video series. So we started brainstorming around it. And I do what I do, which is I came up with, you know, kind of like, here's the model for it. Here's some of the stuff we talk about. And what I remember doing was sending her a list of the topics that I thought both of us would have fun talking about. And she was so lit up and excited about it. She's like, I love this. Let's do this. And she sent a note to Ezra and she's like, I want to do this. Let's do this. And we actually had an appointment set up for Ezra, Carrie, and some other folks and Cindy to come here to the farm. I live on a farm actually just a little outside of the Twin Cities. And for whatever reason, that trip got rescheduled. It didn't work. I was going to do it in New York. That got rescheduled. And then Cindy got sick. And we were actually on a trip together when she started realizing there was something not quite right. And when she went home and then got diagnosed, it just obviously put a hold on everything we were planning to do. But over the course of a few visits, we also talked more about it. And one time when I went out to visit her while she was getting treated, I audio recorded a conversation between us. And I saved that recording and I've never done anything with it. It was very personal and private. But in hearing her voice, I've always, you know, I've missed her teaching. I've missed her lessons. I've missed her wisdom. And when this opportunity came up to maybe, you know, to put something together, it would never be the same, obviously, without Cindy. But we were thinking about calling it Face to Face with Cindy and Pilar. So I kind of went out with this, mostly sharing originally, at least, just stuff that Cindy taught me that made a huge difference in my life. And I know for folks who've been listening to her videos and reading her blogs and things, so many of us have had the benefit of that. So I just want to keep that conversation going. You know, I want to keep surfacing that wisdom in the ways that I can.
Yeah, I love that. And obviously hearing that story, I really do believe that it is, I feel when I listen to you, and even just the little nuggets of wisdom that you drop in there that are from Cindy on the, you know, in the videos that we've released so far, I do feel like it is a continuation of that work that you planned together. So it's just always so nice to listen, because I feel like she's in there in everything that you teach, you know, on these videos. I love it. And I too am so glad that you know, you are working with us. It's really an opportunity both ways. I love that that we have this opportunity to work with you so closely and get all these, you know, these fun stories and hear, you know, what you've learned from her, and also share your own wisdom. So so I'm with you on that, Pilar.
I like to think about it, you know, as the wisdom that comes out of relationships, you know, and like I say, I mean, I share insights that are specifically from Cindy, but also insights that have come to me through the years of our friendship and my experiences, you know, like I said, on trips and classes and just talking and growing up really, you know, over the course of that decade and a half. I feel like a lot of ways I came into my own adult womanhood I feel like a late bloomer. Maybe we're all late bloomers. I don't know. But, you know, in my early 30s, I was still really casting around, trying to figure out who I wanted to be when I grew up. And maybe, you know, that's something that Cindy and I also had in common, was a willingness to start new things relatively late in life. And so I'm still learning all the time. And I'm still aggressively educating myself about how to be, you know, in a more joyful place in this phase of my life and beyond. And, you know, one of the principles, I guess, I think Cindy and I agreed on is that there's a real pleasure in learning new things. And it's sort of like, you know, eating good food or getting a massage or being in a beautiful natural location. When you're taking in really good, rich information that may challenge some of your own assumptions or help you learn new skills, there's a nutritious, rich, pleasurable quality in that. So one nice thing about doing face-to-face is it gives me a chance to review some of the things, like what is important to me that I've learned that I would want to share with other people. Yeah,
I love that you put it that way, because I too feel like, I mean, a late bloomer, I guess, is, you know, what we're calling it in this conversation. I also felt like, you know, in my mid to late 30s, nope, this isn't quite it yet, but I was navigating and figuring things out and gathering knowledge as I went. And even now, just turning 50 this year,
Yay.
yeah, you know, and even that, even just being excited and celebrating the fact that I'm 50, is not something I thought I'd be doing at 40. I thought, but when I'm 50, I'm going to be longing for my 40s or my 30s. And I don't feel that way at all. I'm like looking forward to exactly what you just said and articulated so beautifully. I'm looking forward to learning more. And, you know, you just, and I know Cindy said it many times, you become more as you age. You just become more of all the good things. So I
Yeah.
love that you put it that way. Yeah.
Oh, congratulations on hitting 50.
Yeah,
That's exciting.
50.
A toast in your honor, and to all the late bloomers out there, since it's ladies' night.
I will
Cheers.
toast you with my espresso. I do feel like I get a do-over because that was a big birthday and I really didn't get to do too much. It was in April, so was just sort of stayed home and chilled. But that was actually a unique experience too, and I'm glad that I had that time to kind of reflect. I've been doing writing as well, and you know, just sort of not being distracted. This is a time of like being in the cocoon, being, you know, and what's going to come out of this when we're all sort of allowed back to our normal lives, although this is feeling sort of normal these days. I feel like this birthday celebration that we're used to having, I call a do-over for my 50th. Maybe I'll just do
Granted do-over. I think that's totally just.
Right? Yeah. So we're going to switch gears a little bit here and talk about silver hair. And I know that Cindy also inspired your gorgeous silver hair. And I have lots of questions. But right now I'm growing out my silver hair. You can't really see that's much. It's down here now. So we're like in the 6-month mark, and I've been pulling my hair back on this little, but you'd see even more. It's kind of like in a bow shape. Like it's right in the middle. I have my natural brown in the front. Of course, I have my not so natural blonde at the end, but I am in it. I'm committed. It's happening. I'm not coloring it anymore. And I'm excited about it. And I hope to even just, you know, love it half as much as I love the way yours has come in. It's just, it's so nice. You know, you're so bright, and I'm hoping that, obviously I have a lot of brown in the front still. So we'll see how it comes in, but
it's going to be gorgeous. I can tell already. It's going to be gorgeous. Yeah. And it's so interesting, you know, how we're really conscious of, you know, well, I have this color here and then this other color there. Right. And I think it's this shape. And of course, nobody else sees it that way. They just sort of see us in this whole, but it's so funny how, you know, I was obsessed by the fact that it wasn't even, you know, where there was like these dark spots. I'm like, why did my hair so dark? So, and now I've started to just, it's been, when did I start even doing this? It's been a few years now, I guess. So now I sort of do see it in this more holistic way. But that phase that you're talking about, I remember that so distinctly, of really like vigilance about where it was coming in and what shape it was going to be and what color it was and if it would look good with the other color. It's such a journey, isn't it? Oh my goodness. Yeah,
I would, and I would love to hear, we're definitely going to talk a little bit more about your story too. But first, I just want to throw it out there. If there's anyone out there watching that's growing your silver hair out right now, we would love to hear. We would love to hear from you. And if you wouldn't mind, we would love even more to have you post a photo in the Facebook thread if you are inclined to share them. So you can drop all of your silver hair photos and comments and questions in the thread, and you know, as Pilar is talking about her silver hair journey, we will kind of pick through them and talk about those too. So again, if you have a silver hair photo, if you've got one with your boom, we might even use it on our socials somewhere, so be Insta famous. But yeah, we would love to see your photos and hear your silver hair journeys. It is definitely one of the more popular topics. We kind of talk about silver hair on every ladies' night because people love to talk about their silver hair journey. So with that, we would love to hear just a little bit more about yours. I know you talked about it a little bit in face-to-face and even when we've spoken, but we'd love to hear it.
Hmm. Well, I will say, so being friends with Cindy for years, I had, a decade of being friends with her and not letting my hair go silver. So you can imagine, I mean, Cindy and I had a few conversations about this. And I mean, there were many years where I colored my hair because I thought it was the wrong color to begin with. I, like many people, was convinced by hair colors, it would look better if you did this or that, or, this would look good with your eyes. And, I think Cindy was always such a fan of like, if it's for fun, do it. Like, there's nothing wrong with putting on bright lipstick or sparkly something. It's really noticing when you're doing it out of fear. So for a while, I think I was doing it out of maybe some combination of thinking it was fun and also thinking that I wasn't okay the way I was. But when it's the gray, for me, the silver started to come in. And at that time I did call it gray. That's how I thought of it, it was colorless and it was drab and it was metallic and not a good way. And I did feel like it just, it aged me, which I thought was a bad thing. So for, I would say, close to a decade, I colored my hair, in part at least, to color to not show the silver. And what happened for me was my hair started getting more and more damaged by these really frequent treatments. One thing that was happening was like I was getting my hair colored every 4 weeks because I couldn't stand even the tiniest little bit of grow out. You know how it is, like it draws so much attention to itself and you're like, oh, it's like a skunky thing. And eventually my hair started not taking the dye very well, or it would get weird colors. And I remember 3 specific times I went to get my hair colored and I came out and it was like weird, like pinkish or strange or very flat.
Right.
And it was really mortifying because now I was self-conscious that I had a quote unquote, bad dye job on top of the fact that all the promises of this dye being is going to be shiny and luscious and fabulous. It was not true. My hair was looking worse. So ultimately what happened is when Cindy got diagnosed with cancer, actually I was on my 50th birthday. We were together at a retreat, kind of a crazy water fasting retreat. And when she got home from that trip and got her diagnosis and told me about it, I was like, look, if I'm ever going to do this, it was like I was about to go get my hair colored. And I was like, screw this. I'm not doing it. And so the first time I went out and visited her when she was in the middle of like a chemo thing, I had the first little bit of silver showing and she's like, I love it. Yeah. And the minute she said she loved it, I was like, well, now I'm in for the dime, in for the dollar. I'm just letting it grow. And, it was weird. At some point, I think most of us have given it some thought, for a period of time before we do it. And we run into other people's ideas about it. We start talking about it, kind of testing the waters. And, I ran into that from some friends, like, oh, I bet it would look really beautiful. I can tell right now, the woman who did my facials, she's like, I think you'd look really good with this color hair because I can see it coming in here. It's really white. And so I had that group that was supportive. And then I had the group of people that were like, oh, don't do that.
Don't do it.
You look so young right now. And if you you're going to look, it's going to age you and it'll age you a decade. So I just finally, I had a conversation with my partner, Alan, and I remember I went in to visit him at work and I was like, hey, just so you know, I'm planning on letting my silver grow out. So just wanted you to know that. And I could just see the look on his face. It was like, okay.
I had a similar look on this front too.
Yeah. And that was
and that's important. Yeah. It's an important relationship. So you want to make sure that you're at least addressing that.
Yeah. But I guess I wasn't initially expecting that from him. And, we had a few conversations about it. But ultimately, I both just in the process of explaining to him why it was important to me, it became clear to me that there was no amount of someone else being uncomfortable with it, which was going to stop me. It was crazy. Like so much of the reason I was doing it was to be my own person. And I also really realized, like, what does he have to compare it to? He's never seen it, and a lot of the images, as Cindy would point out, that people have seen in our culture when they think silver hair, they think mostly gray hair. Right. Which, Cindy did not like that term. And it always rings odd to me too. I'm like, my hair isn't gray. But anyway, we think of pictures of little old ladies or little old, you know, wizened people who are beautiful also,
Right.
but may be a kind of advanced version of what we are thinking of as our current of age, and the way that we're thinking of it applies to us. So ultimately I started, and it was a disaster initially. It was, you know, the stripy, skunky. I didn't like the way it looked for quite some time. So my strategy was covering it up or blending it in with various types of products, at least for the first 6 months or maybe longer.
Right.
And I had a lot of help. I had a good colorist who was very much supportive of natural hair in all of its forms. And she worked with me over the course of a few months until we got it to a place that I was comfortable cutting off most of the colored stuff.
Right.
I think we posted pictures of some of that.
Yeah, yeah, we did have, that was in one of your earlier face-to-face, I think.
The silver-haired renaissance, because it was
Yes.
all about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to ask you too about, and you've already sort of addressed it. You know, what do you do if your spouse or your partner is kind of doesn't seem like they're on board? You know, what can you do to get them on board? And it sounds like you said, like, you really need to be convinced that that's what you want to do for yourself. And I know Cindy was a big, you know, as you already put it, you know, big proponent of, you do what makes you feel good. And if it's fun for you, and if it's fun for you to color your hair, then keep coloring your hair. But you know, as you pointed out, there came a time when coloring your hair wasn't it doing it for you either. And so, you know, that's also for me, you know, has encouraged me to, I mean, never mind the expense of it and the time it takes to go and do it every 6 weeks or 4 weeks or whenever you get to do it. I enjoyed it, and I encourage anyone who continues to enjoy it to keep on doing it. You know, you do you. That's sort of, you know, how I feel about it. But I also feel like, you know, it is your head of hair, and you know, if you're ready to, I had a similar experience with my husband, and you know, he was in denial for a little bit. Oh, it actually looks blonde. And I said, whatever you need to tell yourself, you tell yourself. That's great. Because I was doing I have this sort of mousy brown hair, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, that's just the color that I was told it. Oh, it's a mousy brown. It's not a dark brown. My sister has this beautiful chestnut brown hair, and it's not blonde. I was blonde as a very small child, but then it grew into this, you know, medium brown. So, you know, I just wanted something different, and I was coloring my hair for fun. And, you know, after a while, when it stopped being fun, I thought, all right, I'm going to go to this other, you know, and look, I'm naturally getting another color that I get to, you know, play and have fun with. So, so that's, you know, been my experience. And he eventually, you know, he came around and was like, yeah, you know, I do like it. It's the same sort of, has the highlights because you have your natural and you have this, you know, this silver coming in. So he's on board with it now. And one thing I want to point out is my husband's 95-year-old grandmother. She was still getting her hair colored. And she's adorable. She's a, you know, sweet little, I think she's just under 5 feet. She's just the sweetest little, we call her Nanny. And she has been getting her hair colored for, I mean, forever, for a long, long time. And to some degree, I have inspired her to let her natural silver come through. And I say to some degree is we were planning on, before we all had to stay home, we were planning on having like our little girls' day out, and I was going to take her to my colorist because she didn't want to go, you know, have the line coming down. So I said, well, my colorist is amazing and she can help you with the transition. So I love that you pointed that out, is like, you don't have to just go from, you know, one color and just let that silver line come down. You can, there's creative ways, and colorists, silver is a color. Like, they can pull that and, you know, pull the silver through so that you have more, you know, there's less of a harsh transition. And so, so we have that plan. So as soon as we're allowed to go out again, she says, I'm going to go to your colorist. And so I'm very excited about 95 years old, and she's ready to embrace her silver. So everybody decides at a different time. And I think that's great. You know, she's been having fun with color for years and is ready to kind of try something new at 95. Like you said, always learning, always trying new things, so I love that.
It's really worth addressing, though, I think, this issue of, within a relationship, within a romantic partnership, the attachment that our partners have to our bodily selves is real, and it's funny when there was a question that came through, I remember, on the, I don't know if it was on the Facebook page or something, about a woman who was sharing that her husband actually had been coloring her hair for her for many, many years. They'd been together for, I don't know, decades. And his job wasn't professionally as a hair colorist. I think he was an engineer or something. But she said, his position was that she will let her hair go gray when he dies. And until then, he will color her hair for her. And she said, she enjoys that experience and he does a great job. And she's, been excited and interested to see what now this phase of life looks on her, and, was concerned. And there was something about it that I thought was, she sort of talked about, how can I do this without severing the relationship? And I was like, severing the relationship, this is like 30 or 40 or 50 years of marriage. It was a long time. And I was like, okay, this is really worth talking about. And I think it really was triggering for me to remember, even in my relatively short relationship with my partner, it was 5 or 6 years, I think 5 at the time. It was confronting to have to negotiate my body and my hair with another human being. But there is that piece of, it's like, of course they're attached to how you are or to how you were in the first 20 or 30 years that you were together, a decade or whatever. But I thought about it a lot, and, I had an initial response that I'll share with you. And then I'll share also that I ran it past a great couples therapist friend of mine, Linda Carroll. She's the author of a book called Love Skills and other books like that, but her most recent book is Love Skills. And she's just wonderfully wise about helping couples navigate these kinds of tensions. And what I took away from what she said, and was my instinct too, is that it's really an interesting opportunity to have that conversation with someone, not in terms of hey, I'm doing it my way or the highway. And which of course is your right, it's your body, but getting curious and interested in why the other person has the attachment that they have. What does it mean to them to be with someone with brown hair or blonde hair or silver hair? What are their fears of loss in not having you look the same way that you looked when you were married 30 or 40 or 50 years ago? What does it mean to him to participate in that experience, that ritual of dyeing her hair? And so, her suggestion, and I just thought that was brilliant, was to agree to have a conversation that's at its essence curious and interested, without having the plan that you're going to come to a conclusion or decision as the basis of that conversation. Just expressing interest and love for the other person in a way. And so I would be happy to share her answer in more detail if you want. I can send it to you. She emailed me her thoughts. But I think that basic notion of, if particularly you float the idea to a partner and immediately get a strong reaction of no, or yeah, it's really worth saying, wow, okay, I didn't realize that you had an attachment to my color hair. Let's talk about that. And let me hear from you what you care about. And then I'd love to have you hear from me why I'm interested in doing this and why I'm kind of excited. And then, there's also the whole thing of you can go partway down that road and change your mind. There's 1,000 ways of handling it.
Colorist is still down the street.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
But I do think that it's really a neat growth opportunity in any long-term romantic relationship.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. My husband and I we're Cinco de Mayo this year was 19 years. So we're going almost 20 years of marriage. And it's interesting that you put it that way. And I love hearing that, her story. I had a similar reaction I believe the phrase was, "That's false advertising. I married a blonde." That was literally what he said. And, but, and it didn't start a big, knockdown, drag out fight, but it sparked this this, I guess, a need in me to like, all right, let me think this through. Like, I would like him to be on board. We're married. I want it to be a pleasurable conversation. That stung a little bit, but let's figure out how we can talk about it. And, as opposed to coming and saying, well, too bad, the blonde girl has left the building. Like, now this is your new wife. Instead of being offended by it, I really tried to, like, let's talk about it. It didn't, like, I sort of gave you the abridged version, like, now he's on board, but there was some of that sort of conversation in there of like coming together on the idea, and I said exactly that. Like, I still have my hairdresser's number. Like, she's not leaving the business. There are more where she came from if she's not interested, like, we can change our minds. But I wanted to see, and also, being part of Boom has obviously really opened my eyes, and I feel like given me this opportunity of growth just in self-acceptance and all of that, because for, my whole life, for all of our lives, women, men hear it too, we talk about all this, society kind of telling us how we're supposed to look, and like you said earlier, you don't want to do that, it's going to age you, and all of that, all of these things. It's like a million voices coming to you at once when you are considering a decision like this. And it's crazy that that's what it is, but that's what it is. You're hearing all of these, even my kids, my sons have a little something to say about it. And it's interesting, but to look at it as an opportunity to, like, let me get in there. Let's unpack that comment you just had. Why do you feel that way? Where do you get that opinion from? And not in a condemning way. Like, I'm just interested in knowing where you got that from. Perhaps they've gotten some of it from me. Like, I grew them. I raised them. Perhaps they've gotten some of it from me. So it's really, I've looked at it as an opportunity for even just like for the family to kind of grow around, just confronting conversations that, you have this certain opinion. And it all started from that, false advertising comment. I thought, oh, that's one way of putting it.
But it's so interesting. I mean, Cindy would love this conversation. I think one of the things that we talked about this a lot is that, I wrote a book called The Healthy Deviant, which is all about challenging social norms and assumptions. And her whole spiel was challenging the assumptions around aging. But the people in our lives have been sold on exactly the same bill of goods that we've been sold on. And for men, having a blonde, a woman who looks a certain way, these are all how our social value is determined. And then we have a deal when we get together with people. A lot of it is sort of, it's based on evolutionary biology. If you want to get real academic about it, like, we choose mates ostensibly, at least in the olden days, on the basis of their fitness. How good of a mate would they make, in terms of their immunity and their general health and vitality. But in a modern day society, we have a whole different set of standards. And some of those have to do with wealth and fame and power and beauty. And so when we buy in to this relationship with this other person, we have a little checklist, whether we're aware of it or not. We have a little checklist.
Right.
Like, yep. And then we get together and decide to commit our lives to each other. And then suddenly the deal changes, and like, the truth is, we all are going to change. We are all going to age. We're all going to have circumstances like the ones we're living in now we didn't plan on, wars and famine and tragedies. So what really matters is, like, do you want to go through life with a person who checked all the boxes that were the important boxes when you were 20 or 25 or 30? Or do you want to see what boxes are there now? Because I'll tell you, any person who was dating me in my 20s had a much more superficial, kind of vacuous version of me than they would have now. Right. And I think I've gotten much better with age, and most of the people that I know have gotten much better with age. I think the only people who I feel like I know who have not really gotten better with age are the ones who have clung desperately to trying to stay the same person that they were when they were 20 or 30.
Yeah.
You know? So that fear, I don't want to belittle it. I understand where it comes from because, yeah, and for women in particular,
Mhm.
our social value, we are convinced at least that it declines with our age, with our loss of our appearance of reproductivity, as Cindy would so often point out. But if you've chosen your partner wisely, you've probably chosen them for a whole bunch of other reasons that maybe weren't consciously on your list, but now
Right.
you know. And I think
Yeah.
one thing I discovered about my partner is that I chose him in part for his intelligence.
Mhm.
And when we started talking about this and I started digging in a little bit, like you said, you know, Colleen, like, well, tell me about that. That's interesting. I really started understanding that he was part of why he was valuing me was for my beauty. The way I looked was important to him. And
Mhm.
he thought it was important to other people. And I think there was this anxiety that he had. It's like, well, you're not going to, I'm afraid you're going to kind of look like, you know, this other thing I didn't sign up for. And I'm like, I'm me. You know, it's going to be a
Right.
different color hair, but I'm not going to like put on, you know, like a little lady dress and shawl and go walking around. And that
Right.
might have been fun too. So when I started talking to him, what I appreciated was that he was able to see it was kind of silly, you know, and like he
Right.
was able to talk about it in a way that I was like, I respect that you're able to probe your own thoughts and feelings that way. And now we can have a conversation.
Right.
Um, and so now he finds it lovely. You know, I mean, I don't know. I can't say that he wouldn't prefer it a different color. We don't have that conversation because I'm not going to have it a different color. But
Right.
he often tells me I'm beautiful and, you know, plays with my hair and finds it lovely. And, you know, and I think that that's great.
Yeah.
So not everyone's going to be that lucky. I know. I feel like I got lucky in the man department, but whoever your person is, know that regardless of the reaction that they have when you initiate the first conversation, think of it as an entrance point into a series of different conversations, the most interesting outcome of which will not be whether or not you actually decide to color your hair one color or another.
Right.
The interesting part of the conversation is going to be getting to know what your partner feels and thinks and what they value, and then challenging why they might think that. Because it's a society that forms these ideas and we can challenge them.
Right. Yeah. And it's so much more fun to have that deeper conversation, and you come out of that conversation knowing that person even more on, you know, on topics that even weren't part of that initial, you know, conversation. You learn about their fears and all sorts of things. So that was so well put. We've got a couple, just a very few questions that I definitely want to address before we move on from the silver hair portion. And one of them is about eyebrows. So Cindy says she's been using Boom for quite a while, and she remembers Cindy Joseph saying not to color the eyebrows. So she's curious, like, what the latest is, and maybe just, you know, how do you address that? I personally don't have any silver brows just yet, but I'm curious too.
Yeah. That's really interesting. So yeah, Cindy and I did talk a little bit about that. I remember. So one of the things I remember Cindy saying, and I think that this is true, is that, you know, as we allow our hair to go silver and all of these other things are happening, we sometimes get very attached to maintaining, just like we did our hair, like dark eyebrows. And I think her view as a makeup artist and as a purveyor of pro-age beauty was that it doesn't look that great to have radically different colored brows than you have hair, and to have your whole palette of your face shifting, but one part of it staying permanently the same is kind of like the net effect draws attention to itself in a way that isn't, I guess she didn't find it appealing. And I think she often would challenge people, and she did this to me too, with me, it wasn't color, but I was doing a thing to my eyebrows that she was like, why are you doing that? And Cindy could be very like direct.
Cut to the chase. What are you doing?
She would, and she was right. I mean, what I was, I think, doing was penciling my eyebrows in kind of a like thin, straight, dark line. And it was sort of like, I don't know, it just looked drawn on. And she's like, yeah, I wouldn't do it that way. And, you know, we were really close friends, so she could say anything. Yeah. And I was like, well, what would you do? And so she went through and did it in her makeup artist way. And I was like, that looks better. And I didn't know. I was like, show me how you did that exactly. So I'll be completely transparent. On a normal day out around in my normal life, I don't really do much to myself at all. If I'm going to do something like this, and I'm going to put on lipstick and put on mascara and do my boomstick and I got boom glow, I got the boom glimmer, I got the boom, got all the boom.
Me too.
I also do, I use a pencil and I will like enhance my eyebrows a little bit. I don't color them with hair coloring or anything like that, or like dye them or tint them a different color. And I don't microblade them, which I know a lot of people are doing. I just use a really thin, cheap, old little eye pencil, and I just like kind of augment them, in part because I think on camera with lights you can get real washed out and you don't even look like you look in person. And in part, frankly, because I think it's fun. It's like when I wear lipstick, my lips are not this color and my eyebrows aren't quite this dark or this solid, you know. But I think what happens is that we become habituated to doing our face in a certain way, and we keep using that strategy. Like you said, your grandmother, whoever it is, your mother-in-law, like the 95-year-old person, we've all seen women in their 80s or 90s who are still doing this very bright lipstick from the 50s, you know, and these dark arched eyebrows from that era. And it just calls attention to itself, and it's like a costume or it's not really about enhancing their natural beauty anymore. It's about putting on a face. So that's, I think, what Cindy would talk about, is sort of noticing the nuances of what your intent is in interfering with what's ever there, you know, to augment it, to celebrate it, to play with it, you know. And it's sort of, she would often make the analogy too of like cat eye eyeliner, which, you know, was a fashion in the 60s that came back. And it doesn't look natural, but it's fun. It's beautiful in its own way. It's like, it's like glimmer or anything like that. It's like, So I think that that's kind of the philosophy of beauty that Cindy would have talked about with eyebrows or with almost anything else. And if it's fun for you, you know, like Amanda Palmer, who's an amazing performing artist, will sometimes like draw on lightning bolts on her eyes, you know, like she just draws these crazy shapes. And I've seen more and more people who, for example, are going through chemotherapy, who every day have a different set of eyebrows. And it's just like, obviously I don't have any eyebrows, so I'm just going to play with it. Boy brow today, arches tomorrow. And that is having fun. And I think that that's great.
Yeah. And I think that's the point. Right. Great. And then one more question, and this one is more specific to how you take care of your hair. So everyone loves your hair, including me. And just curious if you have anything specific that you do to nourish it and keep it, you know, moisturized and, you know, take care of your beautiful mane.
Oh, thank you. That's lovely. Well, I will say, first of all, ceasing to color my hair was the best thing I ever did for the quality and health and just manageability of my hair. And I don't do very much to it now as a result. I've never been much for, you know, like I've blow drying and things like that. I don't curl it or blow dry it. I just let it dry naturally. What I do, I have wavy curly hair. This is my natural curl, but I didn't know that for a long time. And I struggled with it being poofy and strange, or getting straight in spots and curly in others. And just, I didn't like it very much. So I briefly did try in that era of like the Brazilian blowout. I let a hairdresser talk me into straightening it. And it was very glamorous, like for a minute and a half. And then it was a disaster. So about the time I was recovering from that, I started looking into curly hair strategies, and I ran across the Devashan, or Devashan, I don't know how you say it, but Lorraine Massey's approach. And that's, she's the one who started the kind of curly girl method approach to dealing with curly hair.
Right.
And I will say there's sort of two pieces of this for people who are interested. Part of it is the technique and the methodology, and part of it is a line of products. And, you know, I have actually used a bunch of different products and that have created good results. I do still use those products because of the ones I've tried. I like them best. And it's Devachan is the name of the company. And I will say, while I like the products, I think the technique and the awareness of really handling wavy hair and natural colored hair with respect is even more important. So there's a whole routine, and I don't do it every day. And now it only takes me about 5 minutes to do the part. But basically there's like a shampoo that doesn't have sulfates and doesn't have harsh detergents. And it is kind of like a, you know, oil dissolving oil type of shampoo. It, like, you put it on, it doesn't suds or lather. And there are many versions and brands like this now. But no sodium lauryl sulfate or anything in it. I use the shampoo like that, and then a conditioner. And then I don't rinse the conditioner out completely, but I kind of drip water in it and then squeeze out the excess stuff. And then I add a gel that's like mixes with this leftover conditioner and creates this kind of cast on these curls that dry naturally when I'm done. Squeeze it out. You don't towel dry it. You don't fuzz it up. You don't go crazy messing with it while it's wet, and it just forms natural curls. And then when it dries, you kind of, you know, squinch it a little bit and it kind of looks like this. So, that's the strategy. I've visited a few different curly girl salons over the years, and they all do similar strategies. Well, it's not true. There are two major different versions. This is the one that I like. There's another one that I don't like as well. I won't say any names, but I think finding a salon that appreciates natural color and natural textured hair is really important. And they're growing and coming to communities like mad. Even in my small town in Wisconsin, there's now one. So work with a stylist initially to have them show you the technique. And also, like you said, if you're working with a stylist to help you grow out your silver, you will probably find most often that the stylists who are great at dealing with natural color coming in and helping transition well are also really good, more likely to be good at natural texture. And if you can do both at once, I would strongly encourage you to do that. Whether your hair is straight or wavy, go with the texture you have, get a cut that works for that texture, and let the color enhance it.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. The biggest aha, or I should say the one step that I took that had the most impact on the health of my hair, besides now I haven't had it colored for about 9 months, is not washing it every day. Just not washing it every day has been, you know, and also washing it in cooler water. I used to take the hottest shower that you can handle and lather up and wash your hair every single day and do the, you know, the blow drying and the whole thing. Like you said, like you were saying about putting on the face, that was like how you do your hair. That was it. And I mean, my hair was just, very broken for a long time. And it's, you know, I still have, I always said thin hair. My stylist said, you do not have thin hair, you have fine hair. Okay, so it's fine hair, but it's also straight. It's just very straight. And I just thought that was my fate, was for it to just, after it got to be a certain length, like maybe around here, it just started getting all raggedy at the end, and just, you know, I could never have it longer without it looking kind of just, you know, a wreck at the bottom. And she said, that's because you're just overdoing it. You're over washing it, you're over drying it, you're over curling it, you're over everything. Just stop that. Do it every other day or every 3 days, do the whole thing. And so that's been the biggest change for me in terms of it becoming much more healthy. And now that it's coming, the silver's coming in, because you hear all sorts of different things about, you know, silver hair is this wiry texture and it's just going to be weird. And it feels exactly the same as the rest of my hair. Like, I don't feel like, oh, this piece of hair feels a little more, maybe the first 2 or 3 that like started coming up in the part, they were like these wiry, and I thought, oh boy, it's on out. It'd be weird. But then it was around that same time, I started seeing this colorist, and she was just really educated. And I think that's what you're saying too, is like, find somebody who is going to talk to you about your hair and educate you about your hair, not about like what's trendy and what, oh, you want straight hair. Find someone who's going to help you to embrace what you have and enhance and beautify what you have, rather than say, you know, get it straightened.
Yes. And I will offer one piece of counsel in that for me was very helpful. You know, I started by explaining how I had a picture of Cindy up on my brand board for the magazine.
Yeah.
But you can build a board of pictures of beautiful people that you find attractive or inspiring who share some of the characteristics that you naturally have. So, you know, if you're thinking about doing silver hair, start collecting silver hair people. If you are a person who has wavy hair, start collecting that. I mean, you can build a Pinterest board, for example.
Yeah.
But it was really helpful for me because, again, we live in a culture that likes to present certain idealized notions of beauty. And like, if all you see is the Kardashians held up to you as the model of beauty and you don't look anything like a Kardashian, you're kind of screwed, you know? So,
or unwilling to do all that.
Yeah, exactly. So I really like, you know, collecting pictures of natural looking women with silver, you know, curly-ish hair and with face shapes kind of like mine and attitudes that appealed to me. And then I was able to start visualizing myself as a good version of me, not as a kind of mediocre version of somebody else, you know, that I was trying to be somebody I wasn't. And I just really had to revision myself. And it's interesting, the point that you make, Colleen, about doing less to get a better result is really a theme, I think, of beauty overall. And this is one of Cindy's, you know, basic principles with Boom, is like fewer products, fewer layers and strategies of all this stuff, more flexibility, more natural, let your natural stuff come through, don't try to camouflage it. And I really think that that's true of skin and hair. It's interesting, during the kind of COVID-19 lockdown stuff, I haven't been traveling as much and going to the Twin Cities as much. And I ran out of some stuff and I went shopping and got some other stuff. And I, you know, some of my body and beauty care products, I was like, ended up with drugstore. And I was looking for things that didn't have, there's a whole list of things I don't like in my products. But one thing I forgot about was fragrance and how over fragranced a lot of products are. Yeah. And, you know, you go to put something on your face that's ostensibly, you know, some magical scrub or mask or whatever. And whatever you think you're doing might be one thing, but you're also putting a ton of chemicals and layering on all of these different kinds of ingredients. You don't know what they do. We do that with our hair, our body, our face, even our tooth routine. You know, we put toothpaste in our mouth that's supposed to be whitening, but a lot of times it's just full of chemicals. So I'm a big believer in simplifying those routines as much as you can, and being conscious of respecting the natural integrity of your hair and your skin instead of screwing with it so much it starts to just fall apart.
Yeah. I think that's, you know, when you addressed skin too, it's, you know, it's interesting. The relationship that I have with my skin, I used to put all sorts of foundation on. This is a perfect segue, by the way, because we did just get a question in from our audience. What foundation are you wearing? So I'm gonna, and it's for both of us, and I'm going to start by saying I am not wearing any foundation. I am wearing these two sticks right here, Boomstick Glow and Boomstick Color. I don't even have glimmer on tonight. Normally I'll put a little bit on my eyelids for a little shimmer, but the color, and this is why, you know, part of it is, one, like you said, you're putting all this stuff, and you know, this is not to say anything about, there are foundations that are, you know, I guess as healthy as you can get. You know, they're not full of chemicals. They're, you know, but there is a certain level of, it's not natural. It's not what I look like. And while yes, we're on Boom Ladies Night, I want to look my best, so I put a little color on my lips and I do a little bit on my cheekbones. But my skin is my skin. And I think, and I've only just very recently started to kind of accept, you know, the color. I have two little, I call them my little, they are age spots, I guess. They're like little, you know, freckles or beauty marks, whatever you want to call them. And they're very symmetrically placed on my cheeks, right here and here. And I feel like I don't want to wear a foundation that feels real heavy because my skin is very sensitive. And, you know, I would wear it tonight for Boom Ladies Night and have this like perfectly airbrushed looking face. And then tomorrow and for the next week, I would pay for that dearly because my face just doesn't, I haven't found anything that really, you know, my face kind of is like, sure, put that on.
Yeah.
And then with using the Booms, you know, the Boom products, I feel like I just use it for a little contouring so that, it, you know, everybody likes to have look a little bit more put together, especially when you're on camera. And so I've really kind of just embraced the Boomstick trio and not gone for a more, if I have a little spot, like I will be honest, I have a little, just a little, and it's a powder based, like foundation, but I literally just blotted it right here because I have a little red mark and I think it's from the masks. I'm constant, you know, like when I go out, wear the mask again, super sensitive skin,
Wow.
I get this, it's almost like a rash. And it's been there for the past couple months. If I go out a few times during the week, I think it's just all that breathing and my face doesn't like it. And so I did cover that up so I wouldn't have this red mark tonight talking to you. But other than that, I'm not wearing a foundation. I'm just, you know, I have my little bit of my contour color on my cheekbones. And so that's what I'm doing tonight. This question is from, let me see if I can find the person. I don't know if I have her name, but I would ask you the same question.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I will tell you everything that's on my face, but I want to start by saying I get the question a lot. And I think that the thinking goes like this. You see someone who looks good to you, and this is what we've been trained to do culturally, is think, what's the product that they're using? It's about the product.
Right.
And I want to challenge that a bit because a lot of what produces good, so-called good skin, healthy skin, clear skin, resilient skin, vibrant skin, whatever radiant skin, has a lot more to do with your way you're living than with the products that you're putting onto your face. So I'm a big fan of all of the Boom products, and I use other products, and I'll tell you about those in a second. But I will say, I think a lot of the time when people say to me, hey, you've got really nice skin, and particularly for like a woman of your age, I get that one a lot.
I always throw that one in there. I know.
It's coming in. You know it's coming.
Ending it as
you look great for 53. I'm like,
that was a topic on a ladies' night too. It's like, if they could just stop before they insert foot into their mouth, then it'd be great.
Yeah. But a lot of that has to do with, you know, eating whole foods and getting enough sleep and not letting yourself go to the brink of stress and that it starts to wear your body down. Because I'm, you know, talking to a health journalist, so I got to give you a little bit of the little health lecture.
Yes.
That most of what we think of as aging is really unrepaired damage to our bodies. And the reason our body can't keep up with repairs is it's not getting the basic stuff it needs to manufacture new cells and new tissue and to repair damaged stuff. So everything from free radicals to just, you know, breaking down tissue. So there's a lot that I do that I consider to be part of my beauty regimen, which is nothing to do with beauty products. It's like eating really good, healthy, eating enough fat is super important. I'm convinced a lot of my quality of my skin, which I like my skin, has to do with like, I eat a ton of fat and it's like, it happens to agree with me, but everything from omega-3s and avocados and nuts and seeds and salmon to whole foods that have saturated fats in them, like grass-fed pastured beef and eggs. And that works well for me. Now everyone's different biologically, but my body is happy when it's getting enough protein, enough fat, enough phytonutrients from real fruits and vegetables and fiber. And then everything kind of takes care of itself. Then what I put on my skin is really more about, you know, caring for what's there rather than trying to repair something that's breaking down. We all, as we age, will have unrepaired damage. My mom is in her late 70s and spent a ton of time in the sun. And she has just an amazing array of wrinkles and lines and dots and spots on her face. I think she's incredibly beautiful. And, you know, it was not her goal in life to prevent wrinkles. She's not a person who bought products to, like, you know, retinol herself out or all that. So I think there's a lot of really ways to age well and beautifully, and you can decide for yourself what's righteous and good for you. As far as cosmetics go, I do use a lot of the Boom products on a regular basis. They're the ones that I throw in my bag and take with me when I'm traveling. The other things I use are, I have a tinted foundation that's an Aveda product that's basically a tinted sunscreen. It only uses like titanium dioxide in it for sunscreen. It doesn't have any chemicals in it, which I like.
Yeah.
It has a little bit of color in it that probably maybe like brings up a little color in my skin. It doesn't cover up my own color, but I think it's like a tint. And that I have some of that on tonight. I mostly use that with a brush like you, Colleen. I have a few little, you know, you can see a few little spots here and there from just being in the sun, you know, here along my thumb. And so I use a brush and I just kind of like go over them a little bit, but I like when they shine through a little because I don't want to look like a different person on Tuesday than I was on Wednesday.
Right.
So, you know, like I'll cover up like a little bit of dark circles or just, you know, like anything that seems like it's drawing attention to itself when I'm going to go on camera or be photographed, because it's very different, I think, than, and I prefer, by the way, video to still photography any day of the week, because it instills, you know, people just look at you and obsess, and it's really hard to not look at the zit on someone's nose in a photo, or the dark spot, or now the fingernail slice, because I just got, anyway, like you, I kind of do a little quick zhuzh, and I call it good.
Yeah.
But what I don't do is get camouflaging heavy foundations. And part of that, thanks to Cindy pointing out, one day, I remember at her house when she was living in Yonkers in New York, we were having a whole conversation about foundation. And she's like, let me show you something. Because I was convinced I needed a heavier foundation as I was aging to cover up all my spots. And she's like, let me show you something. Because so Cindy, she's like, right now, look at my face. And you know how she could be real serious? And she'd just like, look at my face. And I'd be like, okay. And I was like, it looks good. And she's like, yeah, you see this spot? You see this spot? You see this? Yeah. Okay. Got it. Okay, good. And get the picture. And then she like goes and she pulls out her makeup bag and she takes this very expensive foundation. I won't say the brand. And she puts it on her face. And then she comes back into the same light and she goes, look at me now. And I was like, oh my God, I can see every line on your face. And she's like, I know. That's what happens. It is good. Like, this is like $79 foundation. And she's a makeup artist. She chose a good product.
Yeah.
But it's true. When you put that on your face after a certain age, it doesn't perfect your face and do all the things it's supposed to be doing. I think it actually just becomes a mask that it emphasizes all the things that you think you need to camouflage.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it is a bit of an art and a science, and I think each of us has to decide for ourselves what's look good, but do be conscious. You know, how many times have you looked at a friend of yours and been like, I think you're overdoing it with the lip liner, you know, or like those eyebrows look crazy on you, or those huge eyelashes, which I think can be fun if they're fun. But if you're trying to convince me at age 65 that you've got these like, you know, newborn eyelashes that look like I don't, for me, that's not fun, and I wouldn't be able to relax in my own body that way. So full respect to people who want to go all the way with all the stuff, but it just isn't me. Yeah.
And you kind of touched on this point earlier too. And I think it's a good time to point out, like when you are in a relationship with someone, whether it's a friendship or a partnership or whatever, you know, you're getting to know them below the surface of the skin and all the stuff and the wrinkles and the hair, whatever it is, and the makeup or the eyelashes. And a very dear friend of mine, you know, she likes to play with the, you know, with enhancing and a little microblading, and she looks beautiful no matter what. But every once in a while I will catch her saying like, oh, it's time to go, you know, this is getting a little, and I think I didn't even notice. Because when I come into contact with you, like I see you for you. I'm looking beyond that. And if you're focusing on, you know, your relationship with that person as opposed to what they look like, you see past it. You don't even see those things. Like when she pointed them out, then I said, oh yeah, okay, yes, I do. I can't lie. I see that wrinkle. I see it. I'm not blind, but that has nothing to do with the way that I look at you. And so it's just about all these lenses that we put on, and when we look at other people, especially when we look at ourselves in the mirror. And so, yeah, that was a really cool moment for us too, though, to kind of just go deep on that. And for her to know that, like, when you are 90, you are still going to look the same. You are an energy. You are a beautiful energy. And when I'm around you, I just feel good. And that's not going to change when you're 90. And even what you feel like looks bad now, like, you're going to look completely different then. And hopefully you're going to embrace that, because to me, you're the same person on the inside. Yeah. And so there's always opportunity for that, to love themselves more.
Right. And how much more attractive would we be to ourselves and each other if we weren't paranoid and anxious and obsessed with every single hair and line? And Cindy would often talk about too, how you go into the bathroom at a restaurant and there'd be all these women in there, doing the thing.
Yes.
Yeah. But they would, she's right. We'd be like, oh no, that has to be right there. And oh no, oh, wait a minute.
Right.
Okay, wait, wait, little kind of, okay. Now I'm good.
Yeah.
No, I don't look any freaking different. I'm going to go out to the same table and people are not going to be like, whoa,
wow,
okay, now I can see you're looking good.
Who's that?
But that's what we do. And I will say one of the gifts, I think, of being in a long-term relationship with someone, whether it's, a romantic relationship or a sister or a grandmother or something, is that you really do understand what it means to love that person.
Yeah.
And to love all of the parts of their face and their body for what they are. And there's a value, I think, to caring enough about our presentation of self and our appearance that we invest energy and time and attention in taking care of ourselves. But I do think, Cindy really made a good point when she talked about coming from a place of love and fun and joy versus coming from a place of fear. Yeah.
I think, do we have another question? Just that you are a beauty in and out, Pilar. Just a comment. That's lovely. And I agree wholeheartedly. Let's see. So I kind of want to, I know we're getting to, close to kind of time. It's been so much fun talking to you. And, even personally, just getting to know you more through this conversation. And I hope that everyone's kind of feeling the same. And we got to hear a little bit of the, behind the scenes, of your friendship with Cindy, which I always love hearing. The more I learn about her, the more I love her. And, really, I feel like I really have adopted many of the things that I've learned. And I didn't even have the same personal relationship with Cindy, but many of the things that I feel like I'm passing on to my friends, and they're like, I love that. I have to give it to Cindy. I really do. Many of the things about, just the silver hair and the self-acceptance and the, let's talk about this stuff. This is actually fun stuff to talk about. And, especially with a peer group that is having similar, having a similar experience. My husband just came home and I hear my dogs are about to bark. So I do want to throw it back over to you real quick. I know we're going to talk about your next face-to-face video a little bit. Your next video is on the 3-minute morning ritual. And without giving it all away, can you give us like a little sneak peek and kind of quickly tell us what that is so we can all kind of look forward to that?
Yes, certainly. So the 3-minute, I call it the morning minutes. It's a 3-minute practice, and it's one of 3 renegade rituals that I talk about in my book, The Healthy Deviant. the, the Healthy Deviant, a rule breaker's guide to being healthy in an unhealthy world. And the reason I developed these little rituals is that I think most of us have been, brainwashed into thinking that being a healthy person means you've got to go on a diet and you've got to do this exercise regimen and, do all the things. And what I found to be true is that very small scale daily interventions that allow you to reclaim your ability to make a conscious choice for yourself is really the most important place to begin. And most of us are so worn down and exhausted, we're making unconscious reactive decisions all the time. And that's why we have crazy cravings and eat things we don't intend to and skip movement opportunities we like to take. So this one practice is the first of these 3 renegade rituals. And it's really simple. I'll go into more depth when we talk about it in the video, of course. But the basic idea is that when you wake up in the morning, before you do anything else, before you reach for your iPhone, before you turn on the television or the radio, before you get into email or open the newspaper, you take first 3 minutes of the day for yourself. And you do something to come to waking gradually that you find pleasurable and comfortable and appealing. And that might just be getting yourself a cup of coffee and sitting down and looking out the window. It might be sitting with your pet and just petting your dog or your cat. It might be, for me, I play the guitar sometimes, or I'll go outside and just look at the sky. You might just stay in bed for 3 minutes and just notice how it feels to be in bed and to be comfortable and notice how you're doing that day. But the magic of the practice, which is really based in a scientific set of principles that have to do with what's going on in your brain waves. So we're going to talk about the theta state when we talk about this in the video. It's really respecting that our human body minds are not binary systems. They're not off and on. You really have to kind of ease into your day. And when you do that and you make a conscious decision to not let all of this stuff come at you first thing in the morning, you find yourself in a very different headspace that allows you to set your intentions for the day and to go into it with a less frantic, less panicked, less reactive energy. It's the difference between taking the first 3 minutes to be a human being rather than diving into being a human doing, as my father would often call it. And once you establish that for yourself, the rest of your day will go differently. It's an experiment. Give it a try and see what you think. And if you want more details, check out the next video, because I'll give you lots of examples of how you can do this and make it work even in the face of challenges, which there are some.
Yeah, I love it. I cannot wait to watch that whole video. It's going to be so much fun, because certainly, I could use some of those reminders. I feel like I'm pretty good. You have your routine, but it's always nice to hear like a fresh perspective and maybe reset and try something different. Because we all kind of put together our routine based on, things we learned from different people. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Good.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that little sneak peek. I know I didn't want you to give it all away, but that was perfect.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I will say Cindy is actually present in this for me too, because Cindy did have a lovely morning routine. She would wake up and make tea. She liked English breakfast tea. And that was what she did, organic. But, at her home, mornings were very peaceful. And she would wake up and make tea and sit with her tea. And, if you were there, she would talk to you. But there was never a TV blaring. There was never a radio on. There was never anything. It wasn't in her iPhone. She wasn't in her computer. And we had that in common too. And it was really, it's a glorious thing to spend a morning with another human being who's getting a sane start to their day. And if you live with someone else, this is a fun pact to make. It's like, well, just take the first 3 minutes and you'll find you want to grow it then from 3 to 5 to 10 to 30. Right. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. I can't wait. So we have a couple questions that I want to make sure that I get to. So one of them is, and we can kind of answer this one together, or if it makes more sense for you to answer it. This one is specifically about Boomsticks. So Cam says she's not really able to use her Boomsticks right now because of the mask. She has to wear a mask all day, and it kind of wipes off on the mask. So she does moisturize with the glow, but the color and glimmer are kind of tough to use. What can be done? I know for me, I personally, like I said, I wear all the sticks, I don't wear glimmer every single day. That's sort of my special, like, little pop of special glimmer. But for glow, I use it to moisturize. I know if you're wearing the mask, I look at it as like, well, I'm just saving my color for when I can take this mask off. I don't put it on my lips. I put the glow on my lips. I do use the color if I'm going out into the world and I feel like I want to, put a little around my eyes, anywhere where the mask isn't covering, I'll use it. But for the most part, I just make sure that I'm moisturized if I'm going to wear that mask, again, because I'm having this issue and I am assuming it is related to the mask and the breathing and the, extra moisture in there is why I'm getting this little bit of redness here. I do keep, glow on that and, keep it moisturized. But I don't know if you have any thoughts around that.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's really interesting to notice, isn't it? What to have that big swath of your face covered all the time and to not be able to make up, and also that no one can see you, and it did make me think the other day when I was out, like it was windy and I had a scarf over my head and then I had a mask over my face, about how some of my friends in college who wore burqas said that they loved wearing their burqas, in women from the Middle East, because they didn't have to bother with all that. Like they just threw their burqa on and you'd see this much of them.
Right.
And, we'd get together as girls and all of it would come off and they had makeup and they did all sorts of fun stuff. But most of the time they were just in it and they liked it for that reason. Now I won't state that I have any opinion because I'm not informed enough to have one, but it did make me think about how wearing a mask and not really having the option of putting that part of us forward, whatever part of your face you can, is a kind of confronting thing. That's it, on the one hand, what a bummer. And on the other hand, what a relief. I don't know which it is on a given day.
Yeah.
I have found it extremely annoying to be wearing lipstick and then put a mask on and then have lipstick wiping off on the mask. And it's just gross. So my strategy has been less is more. And aside from mascara, when I go out, most of the time, day to day, I'm not really wearing any makeup. If I am, it's a clear, gloss, glow, or a lip balm that's just there to keep me comfortable. I will say, I do think that sometimes building up layers of stuff underneath those masks, you can get too much moisture, as you mentioned, Colleen,
right.
And I think anytime you don't have to be wearing a mask to not be is probably a good idea. Definitely wear one when you're around other people.
Yeah.
But there isn't. It's really not an issue of cosmetics as much as I think an issue of what really matters now. And I think we're at a point that it's what matters is keep your health and protect yourself and others, and we'll get through it. But the skin doesn't like to be. And really, skin wants to breathe. Is the truth. So
yeah, that's a great answer. And obviously evidenced by this that just is I don't like being under there because I have relatively clear skin most of the time, unless I put something on it that it doesn't like, and then it gets angry. But this mask thing has been a thing for me, and so I just stick with my glow. I hope that kind of answered your question, Cam. We do have, let's see. We have one other question. I know that I think you addressed this. Maybe this person missed it. Was wondering if your waves are natural.
They are.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
I've fought them for years. So I didn't know that I had this wavy of hair actually for a long time. I thought it was, I had straighter hair when I was younger. So it got wavier as I got older and started learning how to take care of it. Then it just became wavier and wavier. And now this is it. This is my hair.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And of course, there's that saying, you always want what you don't have, but I always wanted some curl, something, anything to my hair. I have certainly embraced the straight hair. Although I used a curling iron before ladies' night, and you can see how straight it is already. So even when I try to give it a little something, it's I think that's just really the point of a lot of things we've been saying is the closer to your natural, what your natural thing is, for one thing, the easier. Maybe not the better if you want to have curly hair, curl your hair up real nice for an occasion, or if you wanted to straighten your hair for a look, for fun, again, all in the spirit of having fun with it. then great. But even me, like my hair just doesn't want to stay curled. So no, we're just going to be straight. So I have accepted it. But yeah, so yes, Pilar's waves are natural. And then there is one other question, and I feel like, I definitely want to make sure that we are really clear about this. So this person is asking, so what if you don't want to let your hair go gray or silver, but you still love the products?
Great, then do that.
Yeah, I think the products are completely separate from the hair. I think the hair is just, a lot of us in this peer group, in this age group, I'll say, we are having this this similar experience. Our hair is turning silver, and many of us are going for it and letting the natural come through, and many of us are, wanting to stick with the color, and either way is right. They're both right, whatever is right for you. And I think my thought anyway is the products are universal. The products are for, women of any age to use. And they are, especially the color. I love how Cindy said, it's really just like, it is the color of happiness. It's the color of joy. And you're really just using it to kind of, show the outside world, like, I am joyful. This is how I look when I blush, when I'm, when I'm joyful. And so I don't think that they are necessarily related to, just that some of us happen to be having this shared experience of having silver hair, but they are separate.
Yeah, I think the silver hair, I think anything having to do with the theme, I think, of the larger conversation is find yourself right, however you are, and enjoy whatever you want to do to yourself and your appearance from a place of pleasure. And, we live in a culture where, like I said, we've talked about this a lot tonight, Colleen, that women in particular have a lot that we fear we can lose from showing our true age or being witnessed as aging. And so I don't have anything but like appreciation and compassion and empathy for a woman who chooses to, or a man for that matter, anybody who decides that they need or want to do whatever they want to do. And I mean, to me, that goes all the way to plastic surgery and implants. Like, I'm not going to be sitting here judging anyone who decides to do something or not do something. I just think it's interesting to explore why we think one thing is better than the other, and to maybe challenge the idea that there's one good way to be at any given age. So for me at 53, I'm finding this is a look I'm really comfortable with and I like. And I have a lot of friends that are still happily dyeing their hair, lots of different colors, some of them pink and purple and white and spiky. I have friends who are going through cancer who have no hair and they're rocking that look. And I think it's all great. I think what makes women and men beautiful is being good in their own skin and expressing themselves in ways that make them feel good about themselves.
Agreed. I think that is probably a perfect spot to kind of end this most amazing ladies' night. It has been so much fun talking to you, Pilar. I love hearing about your stories with Cindy, and I also want to remind everyone that you can check out all of Pilar's face-to-face videos. I think we put the link in the thread below on Facebook. I'm doing this, but like, I'm not looking at Facebook right now, but I think it's below us right now. So there is a link to Pilar. So all of the videos that she's done so far, and now we're going to be adding, not only will we, email if you're on our list, we'll email you when the next one comes out, but also if you bookmark that page, we're going to be adding, Pilar's new face-to-face videos to that page as we collect them. And so definitely check those out. And also, if you want to know a little bit more about Pilar's book and even get a free sample chapter, there is also a link in the thread below where you can get that free sample chapter and check out the Healthy Deviant. So again, we're going to have more face-to-face videos coming really soon, and it has been just an ultimate pleasure having this conversation with you, and I hope that everyone out there listening has enjoyed it. And thank you again, Pilar, for your time, and I hope we can do this again.
I would love to. Thanks so much, Colleen. It was really, really fun.
Yeah.
And happy birthday, a little late.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's a big year.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining.